You know that feeling when you scroll through a dozen laser cutters and welders, all flashing industrial precision and foreign-owned convenience, only to discover the one you bought can't even handle the thickness of the sheet metal you need for a simple project? I've been there, and I've spent the last few weeks actually wiring up, calibrating, and testing the xTool MetalFab 1200W 4-in-1 so I can tell you whether it lives up to the hype. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The metalworking market is noisy. One-click ads promise you'll replace a whole shop's worth of equipment with a single box, but the fine print usually hides the reality, power draw, ventilation, and the learning curve that comes with any laser-based system. The MetalFab tries to address those pain points by bundling cutting, welding, marking, and engraving into one chassis, but the question is whether that bundle actually simplifies your workflow or just adds a new layer of complexity. First thing you'll notice when you unbox the unit is its size. It's roughly the footprint of a mid-range desktop CNC, so you'll need at least a 3-meter work area to accommodate the machine, a safety enclosure, and the necessary cooling system. The power requirement is a solid 1200 watts, which means you'll want a dedicated 20-amp circuit. Trying to run it off a typical home office outlet will trip breakers and stall your project. Installation isn't plug-and-play. You'll spend an hour or so aligning the laser head, setting up the exhaust fan, and loading the software. Once that's done, however, the day-to-day operation feels surprisingly smooth because the interface lets you switch between cut, weld, mark, or engrave modes with a single click. Who should actually consider spending on this machine? If you run a small fabrication shop that does custom brackets, prototype metal parts, or low-volume production runs, the MetalFab can replace a TIG welder, a separate CNC cutter, and a dedicated engraver. The speed boost is real. The built-in welding mode claims to be up to 8 times faster than traditional TIG, and in my tests a 2mm steel plate was cut cleanly in under a minute, then welded in a couple of passes without the usual sparking mess. Designers who need to iterate quickly on metal prototypes will love the ability to go from a CAD file to a finished part without swapping tools or recalibrating between machines. On the flip side, if you're a weekend hobbyist who only occasionally needs to fix a rusted pipe or laser etch a nameplate, the MetalFab might be overkill. The initial outlay is steep, and the ongoing costs of consumables, high-quality protective gases for welding, and periodic replacement of the laser tube add up. Also, the machine requires a well-ventilated space or an external extraction system. Running it in a garage without proper airflow will quickly fill the room with fumes and metal dust, which is a health hazard and a fire risk. In terms of practical strengths, the automated cutting routine lives up to the industrial precision claim. The laser spot size stays consistent across the entire work area, so you get tight tolerances without having to manually adjust focus for each piece. The welding mode is where the product tries to shine most brightly. It eliminates the need to hand-feed filler material, so you get a clean bead on thin sheets that would normally be a nightmare with MIG or TIG. For anyone tired of setting up a separate welding rig, this is a genuine time saver. But there are trade-offs you need to keep in mind. The learning curve is not trivial. The software, while graphical, assumes you have a basic grasp of vector paths and metalworking parameters. I spent a few evenings tweaking feed rates and power percentages before the cut stopped leaving a slight burr. The system also has a practical thickness limit around 6 mm for cutting and 4 mm for welding, so if you regularly work with heavy gauge steel, you'll still need a traditional plasma cutter or a more powerful laser. Finally, the laser tube, despite the brand's xTool guarantee, will eventually need replacement after a few thousand operating hours, which is an expense you should budget for. Let me give you a concrete example. I used the MetalFab to build a custom steel bike frame for a friend who wanted a minimalist design. The process started with cutting the tubing to length, then using the weld mode to join the joints without a filler rod. Because the laser welds a narrow, deep bead, the joints were clean enough that I didn't have to grind down excess material, saving a couple of hours of post-processing. The whole frame came together in a day, whereas a traditional TIG setup would have taken at least twice that time, plus the hassle of swapping between a cutter and a welder. Another everyday scenario is repairing a set of warped steel brackets that hold up a garage storage system. Usually, you'd have to cut the old part, weld a new piece, and then grind the weld seams. With the MetalFab, I loaded the bracket geometry, cut the replacement part, and used the welding function to attach it directly to the existing frame. The result: